We would like to welcome you to our very first ever podcast.
And we would like to welcome you to the Natural Living Homestead community.
If this is your first time joining us, remember to click the subscribe button so you don't miss out on a single episode.
In this episode, we will talk about our new schedule, struggles on the homestead, Sean's injury, and the drought that we are currently experiencing. So let's start off with our new schedule and the new podcast.
We decided to start this podcast to provide the homesteading community with a resource for busy people. Many of us live on a homestead and do not have the time to watch all the videos that we would like. So what we have to do is set aside special time to learn the skills that we're trying to gain. Let's face it, we live in a Google world, and that's not such a bad thing. We are able to quickly Google all the answers that we need, and if you want to watch it done in front of you, all you have to do is just play a YouTube video. Like many others at Homestead, I also work a full-time job. When I tend to travel, I tend to listen to a podcast quite often. It requires less data off our cellular plan, and you're not tempted to watch a video while driving down the road.
Sean, what is your favorite podcast to listen to?
Oh, that's easy. Hands down, mine is the Survival Podcast. I'll leave a link in the description box for Jack Sparrow and the Survival Podcast.
How long have you been a listener of the Survival Podcast?
I've been listening to the Survival Podcast since July 1st, 2014. And ironically, the name of that episode, number 1379, is named The Profitable Small Acre Homestead. I was hooked from then on. I will also leave a link in the description box to episode 1379. Okay, what about you, honey? Are there any podcasts that you enjoy?
Definitely an American Homestead with Zach and Jamie. We will leave a link in the description box to their channel as well. Those two complement each other so well. We actually had the opportunity to meet Zach and Jamie at the Baker Creek Heirloom Spring Planting Festival this spring. There we also had the opportunity to meet Doug and Stacy from Off Grid with Doug and Stacy. Their link is in the description box as well.
Just a few more notables that we met this spring and at the Spring Planting Festival are Ozark Family Off Grid and the Awesome Homestead. This spring we also had a chance to meet and visit with Peoria Dude. Their links will also be in the description box below.
So I'd be willing to bet there are some curious people out there who want to know how your wrist is doing.
Ouch. Yeah. Slow. Very, very slow. It's not healing very quick at all. It has been 15 days since my accident. It has taken much longer to heal than I would have thought. And I wouldn't have even thought that this injury would have slowed me down as much as it has. So if you don't know already, I sliced my wrist open a little over 2 weeks ago now and had to make a trip to the emergency room and then got 11 stitches. I was very fortunate to have not done any damage to any arteries or tendons. The doctor said I just missed my tendon. I have been very limited in what I can do, but at the same time I've also overdone it in some cases. On July 4th I had my stitches taken out, and we noticed that a flap of my skin that was sewn onto itself, not to the other side of the cut, the laceration. More than likely what had happened in that case is the stitch got ripped out of the other side. So now I have steri strips over the laceration to hold it together. That means I'm not getting sweaty right now. I'm trying to keep the rest of it dry with steri strips on it, otherwise the strips will come off. But the problem is, working outside in 85 to 90 degree temperatures, in that type of heat it doesn't take long before you break a sweat working outside.
You mentioned that you sliced your wrist open. How exactly did you do that, and what were you doing at the time?
I was working in the garden, doing some knife work, cutting down some things that I didn't want the kiddos messing with. At the time, I had my left hand in either a zucchini or a pumpkin plant, with the big leaves down at the bottom. I got stung on my left hand and flipped the blade around 180 degrees. I thought I'd use the backside of the blade to brush off whatever insect had just bitten me on my left hand, and using my right hand, the knife I had than the hand that I had my knife in to brush it away. Evidently, I turned that knife around 360 degrees. As soon as I did that, I immediately knew I needed to get to the hospital right away. Right now, it takes me longer to do things than I would normally take me. And since I can't get my left hand wet, I have to have my wife help me do things that I would normally do on my own. Have you ever tried to soap up a washcloth with one hand? Or put your belt on with one hand? If you're not used to doing those things on a regular basis with one hand, there's definitely a bit of a learning curve.
Sure makes you think hard about off-grid situations and raw. It makes you think about how prepared you would be medically if there wasn't a hospital to go to. It makes you wonder if you have the knowledge to treat someone with an injury like that. When your adrenaline is pumping, that's one thing. But what happens when your adrenaline stops pumping and now nausea runs all over you? This isn't something that we could have taken care of ourselves, but it is possible that we could be prepared for a situation like this in the future.
So that brings us up to the next topic of the struggles that we've faced on the homestead over the last month. Not only has my injury been very complicated to work around and left us short-handed, no pun intended, but so has the heat and the drought that we've faced over the course of the last month.
Right now, if it doesn't get watered by us, then it doesn't get watered at all. We had 1/10 of an inch yesterday, and we've had that happen 2 other times in the last month. So 3/10 of an inch over the course of the last month. And that means that we are staying very busy keeping everything watered. And our pump only puts out about 2 to 3 gallons per minute. We've had a large investment this year with garden hoses. We have continued to put in infrastructure over the course of the last month to improve our watering efficiency. We haven't let go of the idea of having flowers on the homestead, and we probably won't ever, but it takes a lot of work to keep up the pretty flowers that are seen from the road.
It requires checking on plants and animals multiple times a day. By 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it's time to recheck if there are any plants that are wilting from the heat, and checking the water for the ducks and the chickens and the goats and well, let's not forget the rabbits either.
And unlike last summer, mowing has pretty much come to a halt. But I think we would much rather be mowing than struggling with the watering chores. We also live on a sand farm, and that means our property doesn't hold any moisture. We are slowly improving the soil, but that does take a lot of time. There's been a ton of progress inside paddock 2. Even before we built that paddock, it never grew grass the way it does now. It was pretty much blow sand before.
It takes time to build a farm and to put in infrastructure. We are just in the beginning stages, and we have a long way to go. I would say that our third and last major struggle over the course of the last month has been keeping up on the garden. Don't you think so, babe?
Yes, for sure. That has been difficult to keep up on.
Well, because we've kept up on the watering so well, the weeds haven't had any problem thriving. We've had heavy workloads, and myself in particular in the irrigation industry, while it's dry, it has been a very heavy workload too. It has limited the amount of time that I can help out on the farm. But because the garden got away from us, we learned what works well in the soil conditions, having sandy loam soil. I really like the idea of planting peppers and tomatoes in grass. It made such a difference on how well paddock 2 holds moisture. And as long as I can mow between the plants, it seems to be working great.
Well, I can tell you the kids' least favorite chore is weeding the garden. But when we come together as a team, we can accomplish leaps and bounds.
Let's talk about our new schedule and what type of commitment we're willing to bring to our channel and our audience.
Well, we are 7 days a week now, and we have a set schedule of what type of video to do each day of the week and what our viewers can expect to see. I think the Saturday Night Live segment will turn out to be a good thing, but currently we are still trying to get the kinks worked out of it. We will try some new things this Saturday with it, hopefully, and that will make a difference. Sean, do you have a favorite segment that you're looking forward to each week?
Yes, for me it's Survival Sunday. That and Saturday Night Live and the podcast Thursday. I know we have some problems with the Saturday Night Live, but it'll get worked out soon. Nikki, what is your favorite segment of the week?
I like Kitchen Time Tuesday and Saturday Night Live. I think that gives us a good balance between homestead-type cooking, live interaction how-tos, guy stuff, and our new podcast.
We would also like to remind you guys that if you would like to discuss a topic here on the podcast, please send us an email at www.naturallivinghomestead@gmail.com. In the subject line, please put podcast. That way we know that you would like to talk about that topic during one of our podcasts. Emails must be sent by Monday evening at 11 p.m. Central Time. This gives us time to get it worked into our podcast.
So if you're new to our channel and you're just looking to get started into homesteading, you might have figured out that it's not as easy as you might think. There are always constant struggles and new skill sets to learn. We would like to thank you guys for joining us today on our very first podcast episode, and we invite you back each and every day. Thanks for listening and sharing our journey on a small farm.